This is another Film Dimension interview with Sam Bell from Trash Arts. Sam, hello, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you? You good?
Yes, yeah, not too bad, not too bad. It's Tuesday morning, the sun's not out, but
Yeah, it's
that's
dark and grim today.
yeah, yeah, meets the subject perhaps. Um, we're going to be talking about yourselves, Trash Arts, what you guys do, how long you've sort of been around for, some of the amazing films you make. So basically, yeah, I suppose the first question would be basically anyone that is not aware of what you guys do, how would you describe yourself? And tell me a bit about how you guys got started.
Trash House is an independent film production company. We just try to work on zero budgets and to work with new filmmakers who might not necessarily have like university education, but they're interested in getting involved with filmmaking. The only way you can really get involved with filmmaking is by obviously making films. So
Sure.
we've done numerous web series, short films, feature films out to different distributors. And yeah, essentially well on like poetry and music side. We just try to, if we can, be some sort of to help a community of artists essentially. To allow a platform to be there, and then also to hopefully be able to network with who we work with internationally and nationally to those more locally to us. So it's really about getting as much things out as possible in that regards. We tend to focus on horror films. We do comedy shows as well, but horror, I like a nice downward spiral, a nice grim dark story. So we do
Sure.
a lot of horror films in that respect. Also, like horror is the best platform to talk about all of the crap that goes on in the world, as far as I'm
Yeah, yeah,
concerned.
yeah, absolutely. Um, I mean, horror is a big genre, and there's lots of fans of it. Um, before we get into sort of how you guys sort of started, I suppose it's what's your thinking of horror? Because there's tons of different types of horror films, and maybe people that are not massively into horror don't appreciate sort of the nuances of it.
Hmm.
Well, yeah, what does horror mean to you, and how's it a sort of separate thing compared to say comedies or dramas and that sort of
I think we tend to forget that, like, firstly, some of the best horror movies, they're always telling you, they're always trying to tell you something about society that's happening at that time,
thing?
or to the more primal urges of, like gender, sexuality, anxiety, fear. They're all primal things that we feel. So it's always going to have a kind of reception to an audience. I love horror in that respect.
Sure.
Psychological horror, because I'm really interested in the idea of corruption when it comes to anything I'm creating. And horror plays a lot within that because we bring out the darkness and the fact that maybe it's not the monster that's darker than the humans in that respect. And we
Mm.
can connect to those kind of things. And yeah, like as far as like being an independent filmmaker as well, horror doesn't expect you to have famous people. It's all about trying to be as
Yeah.
creative as you can and getting like great performances out of people. Like horror lives on great performances. It just doesn't, you can't just, you still need good characters and you still need good actors. So yeah, like horror just encapsulate everything that I love about film, basically.
Sure. Sure. That's a good point about the performances, and I suppose everyone knows what it's like to be scared. you know,
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
and it's a fun thing. You can do a lot of fun things inside that genre that perhaps is
Mm.
more difficult to do in other ones. So how did Trash Arts come about? How did you start your journey on making films?
Basically, on my last year of college, which was about 14 years ago, I've been doing trash arts for about 14 years. I just wanted to set up a film production company, and I had a few others that I was working with, and we made a feature film like pretty much immediately, and it was terrible. For a long, good couple of years, everything was awful, but it's all about learning, and mistakes is the most key thing
Sure.
you can go through as a filmmaker. And
Yeah.
like from that point, it was just a case of keep on creating, and I think it was about film, I met a new creative collection of people. And I realized, why am I trying to do this? But why am I trying to selfishly do this by myself? That's not what this is about. This is about supporting others. So those people came involved, and I've been working with them for like the last 10 years. So it was finding the right kind of people and then just making films and getting them out there as much as possible.
Mm.
I'm self-employed, so I've been running Trash Arts as a limited company since 2016. So in doing so, I feel like I have to try and keep making films all
Yeah, of course.
the time. It's kind of like, well, what else am I supposed to be doing? I need to justify that I've taken this position almost, you know?
Mm.
So yeah, it's just been like consistently trying to do things. And most of it was more locally, but now we've been reaching out more of our international and national filmmakers.
Wow. I mean, that's an amazing story from in terms of you literally, it sounds like you sort of, you burnt your bridges as in like, this is what I'm doing now. So I've got to do it
Yeah.
every day. Um, and that produces results, doesn't it? I suppose. Um, what what do you find difficult about making films today? Certainly from an independent filmmaker point of view, that you know you're a production company, you probably don't have massive international corporations behind you, massive studios and all that sort of stuff. So it's how do you go about raising finances? How do you go about bringing your product to the marketplace and make enough to sort of survive and make the next film? You know, what's the world, the environment like these days for independent filmmakers?
It's kind of weird because when I first started out 14 years ago, like I used to get really annoyed. Even I know I was 18 and no one really listens to an 18-year-old, but I was annoyed there was nothing that the local council were offering as far as the film department was concerned. They always said, "Oh, it's just tourism." And I was like, "Well, that doesn't help anyone." And for a long time, no one really takes you seriously. And if you're not doing it in the university or becoming a runner or anything like that, you're just a young person who's running around trying to make films.
Yeah.
We've found like this kind of swing of firstly working with other production companies has helped to be able to actually make the film. So we've been working a lot with Hill
Sure.
Burton for the last 4 years, and they've been an executive producer on a lot of films, and it's this perfect relationship where they have this great system of being able to schedule and get the the business side of the film together, and we get to just do the creative stuff and working on quite minimal budgets of like 4 to 5 grand. I've never worked on a feature over 5 grand at all. Um,
Sure.
I didn't know whether we were going to get a response from Indiegogos or anything like that. So we tried out last year during the lockdown. We did one for a feature film called Senseless, which we managed to raise 1750 of our 1500 target, which was awesome. And then we did another one later in the year to support the festival run for 2 other films. And again, we raised the full budget. So it made us realize, okay, maybe the fact that we are constantly doing stuff and it's getting to an audience, we can start actually trying to apply for money. I was scared for a long time to even try for it. I
Yeah.
would rather shoot a film taking people's times of when you can, because I didn't think anyone would ever be able to put that much money in. And also I want to know that I can actually make the film instead of something ballooning up to where 2 million or something crazy like that is expectations. I'd rather just go, right, we got 5 grand, we're doing it over 4 days, got everyone together, we're all in this. A lot of our work's improvised as well. So with improv, you're working collaboratively with the cast, the crew from the start. You're giving them those lines and everything, but at the same time, where they want the character to go is just as important. So it kind of, I think that's how we've got away with making more films. And obviously technology has been a lot easier, definitely. And when you start getting films out to sales agents and start going out to more festivals, people start talking to you about what you're doing next, and they want to throw a bit of money here and there. And it's like, okay, maybe this is where it carries on. As far as actually earning any money, that's always a nightmare, of course. It's like I've made more money from films from being a producer who's barely got any creative content in it than actually from my own creative content.
Sure.
A sales agent or a distributor. It's still not enough to substance like going, all right, I can forget about everything and not worry about money. But I've got used to living on minimalism and being poor as hell for a long time to be able to do what I want to do. So it's like it's a double-edged sword in that respect. It's a hard life, but it's like, fuck it, it's life. It's just the only life we're supposed to have, right? So why not make it the life you want it to be?
You're a true artist in that respect, as in poverty and just doing what you're doing. But yeah, you're not doing it to become rich.
Thank you.
do you mentioned about sort of I said you found the councils and that sort of thing here in the UK, even with the sort of people like the BFI and that sort of thing, do you think there are infrastructure agencies, government departments, could they do more to help filmmakers and creative types, not just with funding, but obviously that's a big way, but just with multiples of change locations or contacts, or it doesn't. To me, I could be wrong. It just doesn't seem to be as much help for small independent filmmakers as one that probably needs to be, but as the arts generally, as in other things, seem to get more recognition or money. You think
See,
they could
that
do?
personally, it's a bit of a nightmare. Like, I want to do the BFI route because obviously I want to be able to, have a production where everyone's getting paid and it actually feels like they're doing. They're looking for budgets around 2 million. They're looking for stories they can sell on an international level, of course, and obviously to make all the people who put the money in look nice and happy and good.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to something smaller, like the South Hub, for example, the South Film Hub, I've emailed them a few times because I'm a bit like, cool, you're offering for 15 grand for a first time short filmmaker or whatever, but why don't you offer any support towards like micro budget feature films? Why does it always have to be that the only route to any success is to keep making short films, which
Mm-hmm.
in reality, so you got all these limitations because they want you to fit in with this system. And it's a redundant system because you have right now, you have VOD. And with VOD, content doesn't matter how long it is. It's just about getting people's attention towards it. Look
Sure.
at a great example of it to me was Host that came out last year on Shudder. 55 minutes long, and it was one of the best horror films in years because it kept you captivated. No one questioned how long it was. They just saw it as
Mm-hmm.
a horror feature film. And one of the things that producers been talking about on Twitter and stuff is like, why isn't there some sort of company that focuses on being able to help new young horror filmmakers in this country? There seems to be, from what I'm hearing at least, is there is a bit of a backlash towards funding horror in this country, which is probably goes down to that annoyance of genre snobbery. There's always has to be a
Yeah.
class level and horror has to be seen as lower,
Yeah.
despite the fact that some best directors come from horror. So like when you have all these kind of limitations, you're like, why? Why not just do the same as Blumhouse have done, or start and facilitate and get UK horror? Because otherwise, the reason why a lot of people don't stick around making films in either their local city or in like the UK, because there's too many limitations. There's too much of pedigree expectation, and maybe it'll change with all of the Apple, Netflix, and all those guys putting money into the country. But who knows? And I got bored of like thinking, oh, I need to do it through that way. I need to get a certification. That'll cost me 6,000, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
What's the point? What is so important to me to have a UK release in that regards? If I can get it onto the VOD sites, they can go on certificated. If I want to get it into American shops, I'm rate as someone who doesn't have that. And that's like beyond the whole production cost of the bloody film in the first place.
Yeah.
It's just madness. And yeah, it just infuriates me to even try and think of how can this country help me make films, because they don't want to. They don't want to at all.
Sure. I mean, that's what I would like the film dimension to be able to do long term is that very thing to sort of help filmmakers in your position, because to me, and again, maybe I'm wrong here, maybe I'm misinformed, maybe I'm just kind of in my own world, whatever. But to me, that yeah, if you've got someone who's got a micro budget for a film and it's £5,000 and they're going to make it in 2 weeks, um, to me, the simple economics of that is, well, if it's £5,000 and it's been created in a very short window of time, then even if you're charging £1 per download, £1 per stream, it's 5,000 people you've got to look for, rather than you shot it for a micro budget of £300,000, which obviously that's a
Yeah,
lot more downloads and streams to even break even. So why wouldn't someone want to relatively play with small chunks of money to invest and say, well, the break even point at £5,000 obviously is going to come around much quicker than at 300,000 or 3 million. Um,
Yeah,
because traditionally that's what
yeah.
certainly in the British filmmaking, Hammer horror and that sort of stuff of the 60s and stuff were kind of doing that, weren't they? Obviously,
Exactly. We had it.
yeah, and we made some
Why haven't
really,
we done
really
it
good
again?
films. Yeah,
It just seems so weird that like they were obviously Hammer attempted a revival, but no one else went, we should do a Hammer. No one thought that. Everyone's like, no, no, that was done. We can't do that. And it's like, people want to make money. It's an easy way to make money. Surely, like from a horribly driven capitalist idea, horror can generate a lot of money for capitalism in that regard. So it doesn't make any sense why
sure.
it's not being explored more in this country,
Because
And
yeah, I mean, we do it with
like,
music,
so horror
don't we?
films are always relevant. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. This country
I think, I,
particularly is quite good with music, isn't it? As in, like we do, to some respect, nurture new artists and new people are always coming through. And again, it's with technology these days in the last sort of 10 years, it's people making music in their bedroom and then it going on online, SoundCloud or however it comes out, social media, and they're reaching audiences and they're getting recognized and brought up. And they don't need a whole production team or company and millions of pounds, dollars, whatever to produce an album. Why is the same not happening to film? And it's an interesting one because that's where the not only the new filmmakers are coming from, but new ideas and new ways of approaching it with technology.
yeah, yeah.
It is it's a strange one. Um, I suppose from your position, as in like you've been doing this for a length of time now, and you're hanging on in there as much as possible. Um, Anyone that's still new to this or kind of got this crazy idea that they must make films, um, what's your sort of advice for them to sort of to follow their dream? That how would they do it, and what would you do differently now? I suppose with your knowledge.
I think like it's just important to understand that making films is the key. So if you're making a couple of short film, go for it. You still need to find your flow as an artist. And I think too much of filmmaking, people want to be like, well, what's my style immediately? And it's like, just make some films. You'll learn that style. Learning is more important than assuming you're an auteur immediately. And that's one thing I would have like changed about myself is that arrogantly, when I made my first film, I thought that was it. I'm off to Hollywood. It was a very arrogant perspective. And it's because
Mhm.
we are fed as filmmakers to idolize auteurs, to idolize these great directors and to see that. And I was quite obsessed with Rodriguez. Rodriguez is Rebel Without Crew, brilliant book. I always say any filmmaker should read it.
Yeah.
But he got lucky, and he was in the right, geographically in the right place to be able to
Mhm.
go and pop down to LA, because we don't have anything like this in this country. I just think people should make films, and the most key thing that everyone should try and do more, and it's one of the things I've learned so much during COVID, is networking. Networking is key to everything, and networking can be, if you can, get to a festival. If not, podcasts,
Mhm.
all these kind of things. You're seeing other people build at the same time as you, and they're just as talented. And it's really cool just to watch it all kind of grow at the same time. I think that's so important that we need to take away that this is about the singular artist and build your team, work with other great teams, make it. I always used to say, a scene doesn't develop from one person, it develops from a load of people. And if
Yeah.
anything's going to happen in this country, we need to be pushing more people forwards rather than just one good film and the rest of them
Yeah.
are like,
Yeah, 100%. And that's the other reason why I wanted to reach out to you guys, because again, when I found out that you were sort of based in Portsmouth and you initially started making films in Portsmouth, but you do have a slightly larger remit now. But again, I've heard, but only from one or two people in conversations, not online, not in the media, not in print or everything else, about that inside the UK, which again, the UK is still a very, very small place in terms of content being made compared to all the sort of the US stuff. Not that I've got anything against that, but that it's such a juggernaut. Um, but even in the UK, there is pockets of localized filmmakers, whether it's in
Yeah.
Portsmouth, whether it's in Birmingham, whether it's in the north, and again, it's almost like the stuff that filters on to television, to Netflix, to the masses, if you like, if you want to put it in those terms, is if the film is made or set in the UK, then it's always London. It's always London,
Yeah.
or or possibly some sort of Scottish landscape, and that's kind of it. You very rarely do you see a film that's based in Birmingham about characters from that area, or
Yeah.
in Cornwall, or or yeah, any number of places, North Wales, or Swindon, or whatever. Um, and again, if nowhere else, just for the UK market, you would have thought that there would be some sort of, the kind of, it's promoted to sort of eat local now and buy local, support local
Yeah.
businesses, but why not for films? Because just in this country alone, sort of the richness of accents and customs and people from in a relatively small island
Mm.
is so diverse. And I like the idea that that could somehow be kind of um, nurtured, you know. And but it does take everyone in the UK to, as I say, networking and speaking to each other, and
Yeah. Yeah.
why not support each other,
Where's the thing? One of the festivals that's really kind of opened my eyes, just how great networking is and how easy it is, and how that, like, I don't know, like for a long time when you're making drama films, there's a certain amount of artistic snobbery. Whereas horror, you go, oh, cool, you did this, and oh, cool, you did that, and there's more of an appreciation. So
Yeah, yeah,
Horror on Sea, which is an Essex horror festival. Now, being
yeah.
Essex, it's not too far to get from Portsmouth. So I've been for the last 2 years. And I
Mm.
met so many awesome filmmakers who I keep in constant chat with. And sometimes we collaborate on different projects. One particular filmmaker I met, Tom Lee Rutter, he's a Midland filmmaker, and he made an acid western in the Midlands. And it's
Brilliant.
brilliant. Yeah,
What's it
it
called?
really has desert vibes, Day of the Stranger.
Wow,
And yeah, he pulls it off. And you're like, he shot this in this country. Why isn't
that's brilliant.
no one places where you can film? It's mad, isn't it? Like Portsmouth has some amazing places to film. I shot
Yeah,
my film Decline, and I wanted to find all like the real grimy kind of areas that take away from the tourist attractions of the
yeah,
seaside, the boats, and all that stuff.
yeah, sure.
And I think we want people to visit. We want people to look at art and culture, but we also want people to look at the signposts to go. That's it. Is for that. So that's all that we need to care about for that. And it
Mm.
makes no sense again that that's become the priority, and instead it's calling and the plane's going to arrive and there's your red bus, because
Mm.
it is annoying. It's just like, why always that song, why always those things? And
Mm.
it's just like, it just seems kind of silly at this point, especially when you're right, like the with everything going the way it is, where British pride and all that stuff, like you'd think they'd want to showcase more of the country than just the assets known across the world when they're trying to rebuild themselves as Great Britain, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
perhaps it's something that might happen in the future. I feel like they're missing out on so many great movements, but then that's what always happens. There was a
Yeah.
filmmaker called Michael J. Murphy. Michael J. Murphy, he made like video nasties back in the 80s, but he made
Right.
them in Portsmouth. So he
Okay.
was a Portsmouth filmmaker who got his films across the world as part of the whole VHS thing, had a collective group who were all like Portsmouth actors, and he would take him to like an island in Greece and shoot like a fantasy horror movie. And
Mm.
they're all like, like he's significantly part of British horror history in this country. He had a
Mm.
30-year career, and in the end, the people who remember him, it's a very small crowd. And you
Mm.
kind of like, well, that guy had a whole influence on a lot of horror filmmakers that I talk to nowadays, and yet he's kind of forgotten in the mainstream sort of sense.
Mm. Mm.
And you're like, well, you want to point out all these great things that are happening in your city, why not point out that? But the local press is not interested in facilitating a platform
Mm.
challenging, especially when it comes to film. They don't want to be like, oh, this new serial killer film was shot, blah, blah, blah. They want to go, oh, this horror slasher film with so many easy kind of comfort identities, like, you know, a cabin, some teens. They're more likely to report on something like that than
Yeah,
something that might showcase the city in maybe a little bit of a negative light, which makes sense. But
sure.
at the same time, you're missing out on what's happening in the city, and you're only picking up on it when it goes to mainstream. So if it's on the BBC or if it goes something like that, that's when all of a sudden there's success in the
Mm, mm.
city. Music scene in Portsmouth has been up and down. But when it gets to the point where they have stars, they ignore everything else behind it. They just go, oh, this is the star of the city. And the rest of it, well, that's just, we've just got a good scene. And it's like, well, you know,
Mm,
you're just applauding yourself as opposed to appreciating the artists who have all tried to come up at the same time, you know?
mm, mm.
It's a
Sure,
frustrating one.
sure. No, no, absolutely. Again, it perhaps it is a sort of a UK thing. I've had this conversation with other filmmakers based in the UK. It's almost like and again, what's your opinion on people making shorts now with perhaps the idea that they want to make a short, several shorts to then get the funding to make their feature film, then to go to Hollywood and become millionaires? Is there tends to be a what's the word a certain sort of default of British filmmakers making short films that don't want to go overboard. They don't want to make fantasy short films. They don't want to make horror short films. It's very much
Mm.
the sort of filmed in the kitchen table type drama sort of thing, and it's I don't know what if it's like a confidence thing or if it's they think, oh, this will play to festivals rather than letting your mind run wild sort of thing. Do you know what I mean? As in, just it seems to
Yeah,
me
yeah.
like it's very they all look the same. They all kind of shot the same. They have the same looking actors. They seem to have the same content. Um,
Mm.
and yeah, I don't know if you have any sort of thoughts on that or experiences.
I think you're right, and I think it's unfortunate because if you name some of the best horror films ever, yeah, what is the most important thing you remember about them? Sure, it's the horror, but it's the characters.
Yeah.
Most horror films to me need to be really strong dramas where you like the characters or you don't like the characters,
Mm,
but you're completely sewed into it, and then the horror comes along, or the horror
mm,
is just characters are so important. So when people just go, oh, I want to make a drama to showcase these actors, blah blah blah, it's like we're doing a horror. But then not everyone. Again, it comes back to that snobbery feeling. People, because horror has that like roller coaster sort of experience in regards to critical acclaim.
mm.
Sometimes everybody loves it, and then they'll choose three directors and go, these are the only people of directors that matter in horror. The rest of it's just trash.
Yeah, yeah,
Or you go through the period where it's just sequel, 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 and then they go, oh, horror is just a bunch of like people being killed in sequels.
sure.
Position, people will instantly think that if they make a horror film, they're putting themselves into one bracket, and by doing that, they're lesser than others, which is so bizarre. Because
Yeah.
like it just doesn't matter. Like from experience with film festivals and stuff, people like a good story. That's all they care about. And
Mm,
when people go to going, I don't know if it's an education thing where they go, you have to shoot it this way, it needs to look like this, you need to make sure this is in there. But these ideas change every couple of years, depending on what's popular,
sure.
depending on what's in filmmaking now is completely different to what it was 5 years ago. But sometimes
Mm,
these educational, these authorities, whatever, they don't catch up with themselves. So
mm,
like if I was a teacher right now, I would tell everyone, look at Host. It was shot to look like it was a Zoom film. It was actually shot on phones. Why don't you go and make films like that? If you can't get access to the bigger equipment, then use your creativity elsewhere. And that's again what horror does. It makes you go, oh, we haven't got much money here. How creative can we be?
mm,
And again, that should be, I think filmmakers also want to know that if they do a drama that they can get some TV actor to pop into, it's going to guarantee to get festival awareness. And
mm,
that's the biggest difference is people want to get onto that festival circuit so everyone's aware of the film. But in reality, your dramas, they're going to get you help to fund another film, sure. But that's all they are. they're not going to be able to be sold. They're not going to, they might be able to go onto Vimeo, they might be able to go on Amazon Prime. But in all honesty, if you've got like a horror film, you don't know the person is in drama, you're going to watch the horror film more likely than the drama of the people you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's why I stopped making so many dramas. I wanted to make like Michael Haneke dark dramas. That's what I was interested in. And because I was finding a struggle with it, but still being steered back into horror, I was like, well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm just making it a little bit more horrifying. So what do you know? It just works.
I mean, yeah, if you take, say, the first Nightmare on Elm Street, you take away kind of the effects, and just played that story out. That, I mean, that could be a drama. You know, it is.
Yeah, definitely.
The interaction between parents and their children. There's the sort of child killer, and just the subject of that. You could do it in a completely different way. It'd be the same story, the same film, but without the kind of the bits that people obviously love, the scary bits. But yeah, it's a fine line, isn't it, between what sorts of drama, or what is a horror or horror drama. But it's perception. Um, what are you currently working on at the moment? Do you have sort of projects that you are trying to put together now? You're filming, and how's sort of COVID and everything else affecting that?
Well, fortunately, because I'm crazy and I like to make as many films as possible, we shot 2 feature films just before COVID happened. One called Acting, which is a horror serial killer film. And both those films are now completed and they're on their festival circuits. 21 is about them going on their festival circuit. But during COVID, we did direct 2 other feature films. We shot Senseless, which was all based in the woods, which is a surrealist, arty horror film that has a lot of weirdness. It's like it's a nightmare that never ends, basically, and it's all shot outside. We had one main actor, one actress, and then for the rest of the cast was me and my cinematographer, and we had a little bit of crew, but again, we had to minimalize it as much as possible. And because we were trying to write all these lockdown films, and then we just thought, well, why don't we write a film where we're not thinking about the pandemic, where we are
Yeah.
working with minimalism and we just go as creative as we possibly can. So that was kind of the idea with Senseless. And at the moment, that's in a post-production. It's just gone to someone for the music and we'll be going to sound design soon. But in the winter, we got lucky again. One of our actresses, she wrote this film, and because of situation, she happened to have this house, and it was a beautiful. So during the second lockdown, we went and stayed there for a week. And again, there was 2 actors. I did the camera work. I was directing. Sometimes I do sound. Sometimes I do lighting. Same with the one of the actors. And we brought on a makeup artist and 1 extra person on 1 extra day. And that was only one of our housemates. So again, we had to think about COVID and just minimize as much as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy with the films. They've turned out really nicely. And I think it's because you're forced into that situation of being like, right, it's this, how would this work? And because I'm editing it as well, you kind of click into going, okay, if I shoot it that way, there's a reason for it. I'm going to use this content for that.
Yeah.
One of the ways we actually got to get into that mentality was 48-hour film challenges. Because a film challenge, if it's over 48 hours, you have to bring your A team, your A game.
Sure.
Everything has to be like, right, we've got this small amount of time. We need to work as quick as possible doing these things, and also getting the best out of it as possible. The emissions it's on the end of Feb. These kind of things are great for films. These things are great for first-time filmmakers. Probably more important to me personally than trying to grapple with getting the bigger budget to make your first 15-minute short film. Why not enter film challenges where the whole point is to make a great film within a limitation? People need to understand that deadlines and limitations are a good thing because it helps you grow your talent. You're not in a position to go, I want 2 weeks and I'm going to shoot 12 hours each day. You're going to work
Sure.
what you, and film challenges really kind of hone you into that kind of skill, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And again, it's necessity, isn't it? It's like this is the parameters, so find a solution inside of that rather than we can do anything we like. would you say again it's the other extreme, and it's perhaps us looking in on that game, but is that one of the big things that's wrong with the very very big budget films that come out of Hollywood, the films that had 150 million spent on it, is the fact because their budget and production time is so vast that they can almost do anything. So they try to do lots of different things, and most of it always kind of doesn't work.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I don't know, like as far as I'm concerned, if you've got loads of people involved and you've got the time, everyone's being paid, then that's a business. But when it comes to a creative sense, I don't know. It's nice to have other people doing the jobs where you can just go, all right, I'm just directing. I don't need to think about everything else. Brilliant. But when you have to put it to just being you and other filmmakers, I can imagine being in a similar position. It's like when you hear like a famous film director say, "Oh, my next film's gonna be so much smaller. I just want to do something big, small away from the big budget thing they've done."
Mm.
It's because they want to feel that less constraints. Because although they've got all that time to do all that stuff, they have the studios. They
Yeah,
have the yeah, sure, do whatever your script says. They're gonna go, no, make sure this is in there, make sure that's in there. Oh, can you throw that product in there at that point?
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's more corporate, it's more capitalist in that structure. Whereas at least when you're working on your freedom, and that's the funny thing, when you don't have any money to make a film, you're actually more free because you're the one
yeah,
that's in control of what story you're telling. It's only when you get money in that people might, and it does happen. People might go, "Oh, can you change this, change that?" And you go, "Okay, cool, that's fine. We're all collaborative here, no problem." But I do think it's important to realize you need to have both. You need to have that corporate sense because it's the only way to keep it stabilized. So they keep making films, and you also
mm-hmm.
need to have that artistic freedom to be able to go, I'm going to learn here. And learning is good when you're free. Because then when you've got the constraints, you go, okay, well, I've tried that out for this before. That's worked. All right, now I need to work it in their constraints, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But again, it's just there's so many very large budget films that sort of come out and go, and even if they get watched by lots of people, in the cinema pre current situation, but it's quite rare that a lot of them really affect people or really stay with them. Obviously, some do, but it's quite they're very 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 disposable. I mean, I can't particularly remember. I don't know a lot of the Marvel films, a lot of the early Avenger ones. Last
Mm,
two, were probably better than the other ones. But again, it's like I'm not thinking, oh wow, that I still remember that scene in Fast and Furious 4 or whatever. Do you know? It's like
yeah, yeah.
it's almost like they could do anything, but they end up doing very little. But as opposed to watching a film that has a tiny budget, and they had to sort of shoot it on that day because it's the only day they had. But sometimes those films just sort of touch people more. And
Mm,
yeah, you're right. It's a business versus, I suppose, without sounding too over the top, a piece of art. you know.
mm.
But do you think that coming back to sort of how people approach wanting to become filmmakers, do you think that, and certainly people I've met have this kind of idea that it's so ingrained that I want to be a filmmaker, so I'm going to make a short film, submit it to a festival. It's going to win the festival. Someone's going to buy it off me for a lot of money to
Yeah.
distribute it, and then someone will come, hey, if you've got an idea for a feature film, yeah, I've got this idea. Great, here's £1 million, and then suddenly you're like the next hot thing. Um, where do you think that has come from, and why do so many people still desperately hang on to it?
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because if you think about how long the push for short films, yeah, in my mind at least, I don't feel like people have been pushing short films 20 years ago when it came to education in that sense. But
Mm.
for the last like 10, 12 years or whatever, it's like make a short films. You anyway, success stories of filmmakers who have made a short film and then gone on to a feature that have been good. There's a lot of stories of people who've done that and they didn't know how to do the full form of the story. So I don't get it. I feel like it's because we as a society have an expectation that something that's long, like a feature film, has to cost lots of money. And you
Mm,
don't want to throw that into a first timer's hands. So if they do a short film, they can learn what it is. And it's, if anything, it's more about budget management
mm,
than the actual film itself. Budget
yeah,
management is important. Smaller, cheaper features, again, going back to Host cost 40 grand to make, which is nothing. And the reason why Rob Savage got the film was because he did some pranks, like some prank videos that had some hauntings, and it
mm,
clicked with people. They pitched, they got their film. So that's like, there's so many other platforms that you can go through that way. But the fact is there's also a lot of denial, because realistically, if you want to be a successful filmmaker, you need a lot of money, or you need to know someone. You need to
yeah,
come from somewhere, and that's the sad truth.
mm, yeah,
Legacy and a reputation that you'll be remembered in 10 years with the other filmmakers who are coming up at the same time as you.
mm,
It's not
mm,
always we just don't live in a society where everybody gets to go to Hollywood. We can all strive to
sure,
want to go there. There's no harm in that. But to make that your only aim in thinking a short film, firstly, how often do you watch a short film?
mm.
How often
Oh,
do you see a short film distributed?
yeah,
It's just not
true.
the first thought. If I'm on Netflix and I'm flicking through finding something to watch and there's a 40-minute documentary or an hour and a half documentary, I'm probably gonna, and maybe that's my fault in that regards. But I've seen
No,
a
I
lot
think
of short films from running
everyone's,
film festivals, and
yeah,
it's
no, I
just
think,
so, yeah. And also that's the other thing with education, because they say like, right, we're going to, you all need to make a mental health short film. You're just getting this slab of the same stuff going out
yeah,
that may be important and maybe developing the skills, but because you're telling them to go to film festivals, this is your professional CV going out essentially, and you're all
mm,
doing the same thing. And it's just like, what's the point?
mm, mm,
Like just post a short film, great. Don't feel that constraint. All you can do is just get it out there and see what response, send out further, keep making stuff. Maybe it'll click and maybe it won't. But at the end of the day, filmmaking isn't about fame, it's about making films and legacy, you know?
yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm sure we could go on and on talking about this, because I mean, this is fantastic stuff, and I'm in full agreement with what you're saying. Um, for anyone who's kind of watching this, hopefully someone will watch this, and wants to find out more about what you guys do, do you have a website? Do you have social media that people can sort of follow you, get updates about what you do? Well, I'm going to put some of your trailers up and put links up and as well. But what's the best way to contact you?
You can check us out on Facebook. Trash Arts UK is our Facebook page. Twitter is Trash Arts Film, same as Instagram, I think. We also have a website, trasharts.co.uk. That's just basically got links to buy our stuff. Check out some trailers, some of ones that don't have distribution, the older stuff, so you can watch the older stuff if you want to. Um, yes, that's probably the major ones in that regards. I'm trying to think if we have any other pages. I don't think we do. So, oh, we got
Sure.
like a Teespring thing because everybody's got to sell merchandise nowadays. It's easy enough to do, so why not try it?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you can go to Trash Arts Limited for that. But yeah, if you want to get in touch with us about anything we do, send us a message and we'll chat. Simple as that, really.
Cool. Um, Sam, I want to thank you for your time today. It's been really enjoyable speaking to you, and I'm in agreement with pretty much everything you said. And basically, make films. Yeah,
Yeah,
create
man.
create
Thank you
stuff.
so
Yeah,
much for inviting me to come on. And I think it's cool that there should be more of these kind of things so people can give that voice. And you start hearing the same thing. Okay, make a film, make a film. Hopefully, it drills in eventually. You know.
I hope so. I mean, lots of people say it, but it's I think it's easy to hear Quentin Tarantino say, "Oh, just make films." You think, well, sure, it's
Yeah.
easy for you because you can go out and make a film tomorrow and have like some A-list turning up for free. Um, but I think it's more affirming if people are saying, "Look, I'm making a film every day. I'm not driving around in a Ferrari, but I've got 10 films out there."
Mm.
I think that connects to people. Yeah. Connects to certainly to me. No, Sam, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.